And you go first, Clara. Actually, you're the
Okay,
one
so
who's
I'm
trying.
going to start the recording. So welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today, March 29th, for Finding Your Place in the Resistance. My name is Clara Fang. I have been a social justice and environmental activist for over 20 years. Currently, I lead an initiative called Activism Hour. I'm also one of the founders of an organization called Oasis, a Green Equity Collective, which helps to advance diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice in the environmental movement. And, you know, Indigo and I decided to do this event today because after the election and the inauguration, there was a lot of interest in from people, um, old people, activists, as well as people who are newer to activism, to want to get involved and respond to all of the craziness that we are seeing at the highest levels. And we wanted to share how to find your place in the resistance. What are the actions that we can do in the issue areas that we are interested in? We can't all do everything, but we can all be doing something. And everyone doing things together is how we build a movement. Indigo, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, can you stop the screen share so that our faces are bigger? Hello everyone. I am Indigo Dawn, and I use they them pronouns or ella en español. And um, in terms of the recording, only people who registered will receive it. So that's going to be both people who are here now as well as people who wanted to be here but couldn't make it. Yeah, and love being here discussing the aligned action we can take together.
So to go over a bit of the agenda, um, we're going to start with a 10-minute breakout room for people to get to know each other a little bit and share how they are feeling about the political moment in groups of three. And then we're going to dive into some issues. Each of our speakers is going to talk for 10 minutes about their issue and their organizations. We're going to start with climate and environment, then trans rights, immigration, democracy, and then reproductive justice. And then at the end, hopefully, we will have 20 minutes for some integration and reflection on how we're going to take action. So I think
Uh,
if we're ready, we can do breakout rooms.
yeah, and let's see, 38. Okay, so
Okay, recording resumed.
right, you can go when you're ready.
Mhm. All right, so just to refresh, this is our agenda. We just finished the introductions, and I'm going to do a little more context setting, and we're going to go into the issues with the speakers. A few more people in the waiting room. So once again, I'm Clara. I am the founder of the initiative Activism Hour, which is a weekly co-working meeting for people to be taking action on progressive issues. I also am the CEO of Green Terra Consulting. I helped to found this organization called Oasis, a Green Equity Collective. So, in other words, I've been doing activism for many years in a variety of roles and organizations. And I really love this work. I find it very nourishing as well as important because I think it's so important for us to be a part of the collective and to be actively working towards a better world. Um, and our life here is more than just about making ourselves happy. I find meaning and purpose in being part of a movement and helping to create the world that we want to see. So with the way that things are currently, of course, this has become an even more imperative purpose. I wanted to share some quotes that inspire me from some other calls that I've been on where we are talking about this issue. First, doing deeply unpopular things is really difficult to sustain with continuous opposition. So this is referring to the Trump administration and all the things that they are doing. The thing is, what they're doing is not really popular. I mean, even people who voted for him are not about um, cutting the Department of Education or putting incompetent people in the military. So the fact that they're doing things that are deeply unpopular means that the more that we resist, the harder it's going to be for them to continue doing those things. The second is they want you to be on edge, hide under a rock and give up. That's why they are doing so many things at once. They want you to feel like, oh my gosh, like, what are we going to do about this? I don't know how to do anything about it. But as they say, action is the antidote to despair. And taking action, being focused is really going to help us right now. And the last thing that we should be doing is hiding under a rock or giving up, because that's exactly what they want. We also have not only to be against something, but for something. Of course, we are against many of these things, but we're also for something, right? We are for love, we are for unity, for abundance, for a world of beauty and possibilities. I'm no longer accepting what I cannot change and changing what I can no longer accept. I believe this is from Angela Davis. And that we don't have to think of these things as things that we cannot change, or that we can change them. We need to meet chaos with community. In the face of cruelty, we need to come together with compassion. I don't feel hopeful every day, but I choose to take action. I really resonate with that one, because I'm not under the thought of everything I do is going to change what's going on, but just taking action is good for my mental health, builds the community, and it gives me hope. And then finally, the antidote to fascism is unity. So the more that we are united, the more we will be able to resist and create the world we want to see. So our actions are also working. You know, even in this very short time, a lot of different parts of society are standing up to Trump. So these are just some of the headlines from like the last couple of weeks of judges ruling against the executive orders and the White House. There's angry voters doing town halls and taking Republicans to account. There's Tesla boycotts, and Tesla stock has tanked 36% in 2025. There are federal employees fighting back. There are rallies practically every day in DC and all over the country, and big ones being planned. So we can all do something, and all together we are making a difference.
So my piece, if you could unscreen share for one moment and then rescreen share if it's easy. We have the power to take action, to resist fascism and preserve what's wonderful about our Earth, the USA, our American Republic, and human rights for all of us. And we are the ones that we've been waiting for. There's nobody else coming to save us. We will save us. These are all things that feel good for me to think about in taking action. And also, it's important to make space for rest, for enjoyment, for your everyday life activities. Because another thing I've heard, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And doing the things that give us joy, pleasure, and relaxation is resistance in and of itself. Because if we're terrified all the time, we're very easy to control. If we're overwhelmed all of the time, we're very easy to control and manipulate. And so being resourced, being embodied, having a good life, enjoying ourselves is resistance, and makes us even more powerful, values aligned, and effective activists, change makers. So as we go through all these different issues or action areas, I invite you to tune into yourself, whatever that means. Notice whatever signals your body, your being is giving you, and notice which of the causes feel the most compelling, bring up quick, makes your pulse quicken, strums your heartstrings, gives you the sense that you want to contribute. And just take note, which are those areas? It could be many, it could be one. Honestly, it could be none of the ones we mentioned today. That'd be totally okay. Just notice within you where your passion lies, and limit your focus areas to where you're most called, where you have the most passion, because that's where you'll be the most effective. And too many causes is a recipe for burnout. Trying to do too much all at once, all the time, not sustainable. I can tell you from experience. All right, I'm done.
All right, well, thank you for sharing that. I really love that. The rest is part of the resistance itself.
Yes.
All right, so we're going to get into our issues and talk about climate and the environment. So it's getting hotter, if you haven't noticed. The global temperature has been rising for a while now, and the last 10 years were recorded as the hottest years in recorded temperature history. And we are pretty much closing in on the 1.5 degree increase in temperature that scientists tell us. Beyond that, which is not safe for the Earth and would trigger some pretty bad feedback loops in terms of climate change. And then with the administration, we have lots of threats that have come down. So these are some of the headlines that I took out of the New York Times. The Trump administration aims to eliminate EPA's scientific research arm. The EPA investigations of severe pollution looks increasingly at risk. Earth's 10 hottest years on record are the last 10. Government science data may soon be hidden. They're racing to copy it. So they're basically changing the mission of the EPA and gutting government regulations, increasing fossil fuel production, and making it harder to do renewable energy. So there's a lot of problems right now. But there are also a lot of good things going on, and a lot of things that we can be doing. So of course we can reduce our own carbon footprint, and there are more ways to do that now than ever. We can continue to contact our elected representatives at every level, in Congress, as well as in the state legislature and in our local districts. We can lobby our members of Congress. We can protest and demonstrate, get involved in local initiatives like public transit or housing or parks in your area, and we can educate others. So I'm going to share about some organizations you can get involved in that do a lot of this work, which you can be a part of. One organization I've been involved with a long time and I'm a fan of is Citizens Climate Lobby. So they are a nonprofit grassroots advocacy climate change organization that focuses on building political will for climate solutions by enabling individual breakthroughs in the exercise of personal and political power. So their main focus is on federal climate legislation and teaching people how to do advocacy, things like calling your members of Congress, protesting, um, uh, lobbying, using the media to make an impact and make your voices heard. So when you become a member of CCL, they have local chapters all over the country that you can join, and every chapter gets action list every week. These are also published on the website. So for example, in January, we all wrote to our members of Congress about the wildfires in LA and how those are related to climate change, and that Congress needs to work together to address climate change. We have a big initiative on permitting reform, and then recently writing to members of Congress about protecting NOAA and EPA and the federal agencies. So over the course of a year, we have made over 200,000 calls and messages to members of Congress, had over 2,000 meetings with members of Congress, and 3,900 local media hits. CCL's approach is really about respect and appreciation. So they're not super into confrontational tactics, but more about building relationships with our legislators to influence them to do the right thing, and then using these tools of democracy. And they have really like very deep trainings on how to make calls, how to write letters, how to use the media, and they're all free, and they do lots of live trainings every week on these topics. So these are some of the legislation that CCL has advocated for, and which were actually signed into law. The Inflation Reduction Act obviously did a lot for climate change, and CCL and many other groups advocated for that. Other legislation may not be directly related to climate, but they address things like energy and agriculture and transportation. The Sierra Club is one of the largest and oldest environmental organizations. I recommend them because they have a pretty robust infrastructure, like chapters in every state, and also even more local units. And their state chapters work with the state legislature as well to make sure that environmental legislation is being promoted in your state legislature. And if you go to the state website of the chapter, then you can find campaigns that are happening in the state, and you can sign petitions or write to your members of Congress about them. And these chapters often have in-person meetings as well. So these are some of the campaigns that the Maryland chapter is doing. If you can send a message to your legislator right from the website. Earth Justice is an organization that is really active right now. Their strategy is focused on bringing lawsuits against the government to try to protect the environment. They also have a lot of actions and petitions that you can sign on their website, but mostly like they want you to support their lawyers to be doing this work in the courts. Our Children's Trust is another organization that uses the power of the courts. Their lawyers have been suing the government for over a decade now on climate change, and their plaintiffs are all young people. Some of them started as early as 5 years old to sue the government on climate change, saying that this is something that is preventing our ability to have a full future. Okay, so these are the emails, I'm not emails, websites for the organizations that I just talked about. So I encourage you to explore them or ask me some questions. So I have time to take 1 or 2 questions and then we can move on to the next presenter.
So far as getting in touch with elected representatives, Washington, D.C. Has an elected representative, but no voting power. D.C. statehood is a concern of mine as well. What do we do if we don't have a representative in Congress?
Yeah, I think for DC residents, I'd really use the other levers, like working with the media, writing to the newspapers about this issue, doing more on education. Also, Oscar is really involved with the Green New Deal Network in DC, and he's going to talk more about the initiatives specifically for DC.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, shall we roll on to Oscar?
Totally. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Cool. Oh, let me see if I can. Sorry. Hello everyone. My name is Oscar Villalobos. I'm the Green New Deal for DC Coalition Coordinator. I work in DC mainly, work on policy and organizing through housing, transit, labor, and clean energy on a climate lens. And yeah, next slide. Excited to be here. So what's the Green New Deal? What's the big question? Next slide. It's a framework. It's a framework of package to address economic, racial inequality through the climate crisis, involving a lot of labor justice and other justices that have been happening in the U.S. for a very long time. This is a callback to FDR's New Deal, where at that period of time there was a lot of social and economic policy that helped the working class, but a lot of people of color were excluded through that. And what we're saying is that we should do the same, but everybody should be included into this, not just a segment of the population. Next slide. So why do we need a Green New Deal? Essentially, neoliberal climate policy has failed us. And basically, the emphasis on individual action over collective has really, really dampened climate action. Really, disclaimer here, we're not saying that you shouldn't recycle, and we're not saying that you shouldn't do those things. Of course, if you're able to do so, but our organization is not going to tell you to do those things because we believe that the climate crisis were created by billionaires, a lot of corporations plunging the earth for oil, making money, and that's the priority. So less emphasis on the market, more emphasis on people. And whatever climate policy has passed, it doesn't go far enough because again, it still has this like same logic market-oriented solutions that does not prioritize the individual, the person as a collective. Next slide. And so there are many examples over the years that have been discussed. This is at the federal level. So I'm going to talk about 2 quick ones. One is the GND for Health that was introduced last year by AOC and Senator Markey. This proposal encourages access to healthcare. It would invest $100 billion for community health centers. This would be huge. This would have been amazing for Asheville in North Carolina or LA with the wildfires, right? We need to have intersectional approaches to climate to help people in the long run. Another example is the GND for schools. So bus electrification, infrastructure upgraded in renewable energy, but also a climate curriculum for students that can learn about the climate crisis. This is another proposal that was introduced by Congressman Jamal Bowman, I believe. He's not in Congress anymore, but a very good proposal that could help our students understand the climate crisis. Next slide. In terms of DC specifically, so my main line of work is DC. I do work on housing and transit mainly. So really quickly, G&D for social housing would provide the same upgrades in buildings, electrification, retrofits, but a key component to this would be giving tenants more power. Again, same idea of economic justice with climate. Another proposal will be funding public transit. The more buses we have, the more trains we have, less people drive, less pollution, right? We want more people to use public transit, but at the same time, we want the workers who perform these jobs, bus drivers, rail workers, to be union and to be well paid. And I do want to say that our coalition voted to made a conscious decision really to not support any climate policy that's not worker oriented, because for the longest time, sustainability in DC has been used as a way to really push people out of the city. More luxury condos that are very inaccessible for working class people in the district. And as a result, a lot of people of color have moved out of the city, and working class people as well. And so we are very, very intentional about whatever proposal we push through DC government and DC council specifically. And that is why our coalition decided to do. Next slide. We have a volunteer meeting on Tuesday. If you live in DC, no worries, you don't need to do anything about it, but definitely you're welcome to come. We'll teach you, we'll talk to you. It's gonna be great. Here are social media platforms. Yeah, so if you live in DC, come through. Next slide. And if you do not live in DC, but you still wanna do Green New Deal work, I encourage you to visit the Green New Deal Network. They do amazing work nationally, but also at different state levels around the country. And they are an amazing group of people that will teach you a lot of things. So that's gonna be my presentation. And I'll drop the links in the chat. Pass it back to you, Clara.
Thank you, Oscar. These were the links that we shared before. All right, let's move on to Indigo.
Yes, Indigo Dawn again, they, them, ella, in español. I'm speaking about trans plus rights, transgender and gender diverse folks, people's rights, including mine. Next slide. Yes, this is me. Many of you know me, but I'm a somatic therapeutic coach, cuddlist, psychodologist, and liberating community builder. And founder and director of Interfusion Festival Consent Program, lead organizer for Affinity and Belonging Camp East, a retreat for radical love and liberation, centering BIPOC, trans, and queer folks and allies. So this is a map that was published March 25th by Aaron Reed, amazing journalist. Independent journalism is saving us in many ways, helping a lot. So on this map, you'll see all of the dark red states have passed the worst possible laws, anti-trans laws in the United States. Yes, we're sending all the links out afterwards. So that includes Idaho. I may not know all of these states. Is that Montana, Utah, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, Kansas, Oklahoma, Ohio, West Virginia, Tennessee, Missouri, Alabama, Louisiana, Texas, and Florida. And you'll notice Texas and Florida are also blacked out. They have these black lines. That means do not travel there. And that is because of some laws that make it actually just unsafe for trans people to be in those states at all. And also there's been many countries that have issued a generalized do not travel to the USA for LGBTQ plus people, or actually anyone in their entire country. Next slide. So the Florida law that I think is the worst, and so does Aaron Reed, allows for the arrest of transgender people for using bathrooms that match our gender identity. So literally going to jail. And then the Texas law that is the worst law, these are the reasons these are do not travel states. In Odessa, Texas specifically, there's a bounty of $10,000 that can go to any citizen that does a citizen's arrest for a person that they suspect is using the wrong bathroom. If you have ever met somebody who's androgynous, whether they are cisgender or not, you may know how horribly impactful these laws can be. And in the first 3.5 months of 2025 alone, 800 anti-trans bills have been introduced nationally, including 34 on the federal level. Next slide. So transgender rights are under attack, and transgender and gender diverse people, non-binary people, are being scapegoated. There's this whole plot line. If you know fascism, they love their plots. And trans people and immigrants are the bad guys in their plot, which is really classic. If you know much history, especially of fascism, in a historical context, it's very common for transgender people or gay people to be scapegoated. So under fascism in Nazi Germany, transgender people were prosecuted, barred from public life, forcibly detransitioned, and imprisoned and killed in concentration camps. So that's really what fascism historically has done to trans people. Next slide. But luckily, we are powerful. You can help create a welcoming and inclusive space for trans people and for all genders, all of our genders. And here's how. Next slide. Stay informed. This to me is the most important piece, is where are you getting your information? And I find Erin Reed, she's a trans woman who is absolutely brilliant. Trans woman, Erin Reed goes by Erin in the Morning. That's her website. You can get real-time coverage and calls to action about trans issues. And just have your finger on the pulse of what's happening nationwide and state to state. And you can also join a local trans advocacy organization. If you're in Maryland, Trans Maryland is awesome, but that helps you build community and take action in person if you want to do that. Next slide. So the second thing you can do, other than be informed, is to share resources with trans and gender diverse people or the people that love them or are in community with them, to just have these resources available. So for people who are losing access to hormone replacement therapy, you can share these links, which will be sent out for people to access the hormones that help them show who they are on the inside, on the outside. Next slide. So you can also share free services. So there's so much amazing stuff that the communities are offering, like free flights to access gender affirming care or abortions through the organization Elevated Access, free moving services, and a crisis hotline nationwide, the Nexus Moving Company, and then interest-free $10,000 loans for any trans people who want to relocate from an unsafe or the worst states to a better state. Move to Thrive, it's called. Yeah, next slide. So another thing you can do is engage in mutual aid. So not just in the past 3.5 months, but for a long, long time, trans people have been marginalized. And part of what that looks like is trans people may have a harder time getting and maintaining employment, may have a harder time just having enough to live a good life. So you can join queer trans groups on Facebook, Discord, or Signal if allies are welcome, or if you're in those populations, and then fulfill people's requests. Like somebody be like, hey, I need a lawnmower. You know, there's all kinds of requests that you can fulfill. You can also just ask your trans neighbors, friends, or community members what they need and give them things that you feel yes to offering, like pet sitting, veggies from your garden, picking up their groceries when you go, a stay in your guest room, especially if they become unhoused, emotional support, low cost or free medical care can be really awesome, especially if it's becoming banned, and body work, platonic cuddles, all really helpful to help people decide that it's worth staying here on this earth in this country, despite the intense hatred and the discrimination happening against us. Next slide. Another thing you can do is search on GoFundMe and donate to random people. Search transition and just make somebody's day. Next slide. And then you can also, if money is your way of taking action, donate to the Transgender Law Center, which is an amazing group that is, showing up for court cases and to challenge some of these laws, which often are unconstitutional, but in the meantime, they can do a lot of damage. So Transgender Law Center is fighting in the courts. And then the Trans Justice Funding Project is a group that identifies trans leadership that is doing things to organize against things like racism, against housing inaccessibility. I don't remember all the things, but they fund trans leadership who's doing really great work for the trans community. And then the Trans Income Project just gives money to people, again, to live a good life. Next thing you can do is resist. So I'm doing all of these things, but you can just pick what speaks to you. You can boycott Florida and Texas if that's possible. Obviously, if you live there, that's not really possible. But if you live outside of those states, you can just not travel there. Like, I will not set foot in Texas or Florida. You can do your best to look into the products that are for sale at your grocery stores or that you might buy, and do not purchase products that are produced by Texas or Florida. Again, that can take a little more work. Do not comply in advance with transphobic executive orders and policies. So that means for anyone who has the power to do so, keeping DEI on your company's website. It means choosing not to follow in advance anti-trans initiatives. You can also speak up against transphobic speech, actions, or policies, and that link tells you how. Next slide. And this is the last action I'll suggest is active bystander intervention can be so helpful, not only for transgender people, but for anyone who is targeted, immigrants. So if you see a trans person being harassed at a bathroom or otherwise, intervene. If you have the power to do so, step in between the target and the aggressor and ask the aggressor for help. Like, hi, which way to the front door? I'm having trouble finding it. Or drop your stuff in between them and say, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Can you help me with my stuff? Just act insistent, really innocent, and like disrupt what's happening so that the trans person can get away. And the DC Peace Team is an amazing organization that offers both virtual and in-person trainings for those of us who want to go deeper into active bystander intervention or unarmed civilian protection, which are such crucial ways to take action. Next slide. Oh, that's it for me. Okay. Real quick, and I could take one question. All right, let's go. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Indigo. Ben, can you go next?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Ben. I'm going to be talking about immigration defense. I'm coming to you all from the organization NorCal Resist. If you could go to the next slide, it's got a little bit of our background. Oh, sorry, my background first. So I'm the legislative team lead for NorCal Resist. I'm also a writer, communications manager, and I'm living here in the San Francisco Bay Area, over in the East Bay and Oakland. If you go to the next slide, I think some info on NorCal. So we're an all-volunteer mutual aid nonprofit based out of Sacramento, capital region of the state, and we're serving most of the northern portion of California, except for the Bay Area. So we serve all the way up to Chico, up in the true rural north of California, and down to the beginning of the Central Valley in Stockton, up to Lake Tahoe on the border with Nevada, and down to Vallejo at the start of the Bay. So really, we noticed when the first Trump administration came into office, that this region was just underserved. You know, San Francisco has a lot of great resources for immigrants. The Central Valley has a lot of established excellent resources, especially with the farm workers union down there. But the Sacramento region just was lacking in services for the immigrants. So, you know, big group of volunteers came together and set up this nonprofit. And we're all over social media, NorCal Resist. If you're in the region and you want to plug into our stuff, you know, we're always looking for more volunteers. It's, like I said, it's all volunteer. No one's getting paid. So we're happy to have all of you. And today specifically, I'm going to be talking about our Migra Watch program. I think that is the easiest program we have for anyone else to implement in their region. And it's just an excellent way to help keep your immigrant community members safe. You go to the next slide for me, please. I'm not sure what happened there. These aren't my slides.
Oh, those are my
Oh,
slides.
these are Erica's. How about we'll forward them so we can go to Ben's first. Is this correct?
Yeah, can you go back?
Okay.
There should be one more.
I'm trying. Okay.
Yeah. There we go. Sorry about that,
Sorry,
everyone. So we're talking about Migra Watch, which is a program we have for community members of all types. They do a quick training, and then you are set up to help keep an eye on ICE activity in your area, immigration enforcement. You know, and I know that there are lots of different orgs taking different approaches to this, but I really like the one we have going. It empowers anyone in the community to get involved. We have over 300 people in our Signal chat responding to reports of ICE activity. And I think that this is something that really any region of any size, you don't have to be a big city, you can get something like this going with your neighbors and start keeping people safe. So I'm going to go through some of the big tips we have for how to set up a Migra Watch program, and happy to take a question or two at the end if we have time. So the first thing we notice is that the majority of reports we get into our Migra Watch group are good faith mistakes. It's people who, you know, they call in with the best of intentions, or they text us and they're like, hey, I think I see ICE on, you know, Main Street, and it's the state police, it's the county sheriff, it's whoever. So the first thing you got to do is learn what your local law enforcement agencies look like. Obviously, this varies greatly from state to state. Here in California, we have the State Highway Patrol, we have county sheriffs, we have city police, and then there are many cities like Sacramento have a unarmed response team for things like people in mental distress or something like that. That's the community emergency response team. And, you know, we just try to educate people on what their vehicles and uniforms look like so that we can reduce the mistaken reports. But at the end of the day, you know, we would rather have people call something in and err on the side of caution because ICE, CBP, DHS, you know, whatever immigration enforcement you're going to see in your area, they will embed with local LEOs. In theory, they're supposed to identify themselves as federal officers wearing a vest or a jacket that say ICE, DHS, CBP, etc. May or may not happen. You got to do the best you can. So this is what we start with, is just trying to break down what local law enforcement looks like in your area. And you go to the next slide for me, please. And then this is what the good news is, that federal vehicles and uniforms are, in theory, again, the same across the country compared to local law enforcement. So if you can get familiar with the main vehicles and color schemes of federal law enforcement, you'll be set whether you're in California, New York, anywhere in between. So a couple big tips is that any official, as in anyone who's not in disguise or trying to otherwise deceive the public, any official federal vehicle will have its own license plate. It's not going to be a state license plate. So that can help spot like unmarked vehicles, for example, sometimes gives them away. Often, we all know the kind of like movie cliche of the black SUV. It is real. If you see those antennas on the back tip of an SUV, that can often how you can tell that it's a government vehicle as compared to just your neighbor in an Escalade or something like that. And a big one to keep an eye out for that most people don't recognize is ERO. It's the Enforcement and Removal Operations Division of ICE. They are often the ones coming into the community to do the raids. Like if you don't live near the border and you hear about ICE active in your area, it's almost always ERO. So if you see an ERO vest, an ERO t-shirt, ERO on a vehicle, that is almost certainly ICE planning to remove someone. If you live along the border, obviously that's a lot different, especially the southern border. That's where you're going to get CBP active in your area as well. I'm unfortunately not as knowledgeable about that stuff. It's not something we really see too much in Northern California, but I'm sure that if you talk to similar organizations doing work in regions like San Diego, El Paso, et cetera, you can get great information on what CBP is usually doing. Next slide, please. And so, okay, so you see an ICE report or you get dispatched from the MAGA Watch group to go check out an ICE report. And what do you need to do when you get there? So really, it's about trusting in the report, but verifying that it's happening as well. So what we do with once someone from MAGA Watch hears about a report, we ask if anyone's free to go check it out. Hey, can you drive over to the corner of Main Street and 5th Street and see? We hear that there's an ICE activity going on there. And really the key is just capture as much video, photo, and audio as you can. Obviously, you want to get close enough to where your video is helpful, but you never want to put yourself in between any law enforcement activity and the potentially detained person, because then you will put yourself in jeopardy of being, arrested as well. And you're no good to anyone if you're detained as well. So whether or not they're breaking the law or anything like that, try your best not to get involved and just document, so you can get that information over to the attorneys and start them getting to work, getting that person out of detention as soon as possible. Feel free to ask, law enforcement to identify themselves. In theory, they're supposed to always do that. As we all know, that doesn't always happen, but you can always ask. And it's best to ask attorneys operating with the immigration community in your area for any local variations or deviations from the norms that they've observed. For example, in Sacramento, we actually have a federal detention facility in the city capital, in right by the state capitol, and the ICE operatives there are known to be extremely disrespectful to attorneys. So we've passed that tip along, let people know that that's coming so that you can go in with that mentality, right, prepared that you're going to have to deal with that. Can I hit the next slide, please? And so when you're documenting, really before you start sharing that video, because I know that first reaction is going to be, okay, I think I see ICE happening. I want to get this up on my Snapchat story. I want to get it on my Instagram story. I want to post it on Facebook or whatever so that any immigrants in my area can hear about it. You really, really, really want to fight that urge and confirm first. You really want to make sure that you're positive this is actually an immigration enforcement operation. It's not, the state police making an arrest of, some other type of actually law-breaking criminal, or I don't know, any other type of thing that could be going on. We had a bunch of reports like a month ago thinking that something was going on at the arena in Sacramento, and it was just security for an NBA game, So it's like, you just really, really want to be sure, because when undocumented people hear about immigration enforcement, obviously the fear goes up even higher. People don't go to work. They keep their kids home from school. They don't go to the grocery store. And so, of course, we want to get any verified and confirmed sightings out there so people know and can, adjust their personal risk levels. But you really, really want to avoid spreading unconfirmed reports so that there's no, wasted noise out there, I think. And remember, you have the right to document and record the police. That applies to state, local, and federal law enforcement. But you really, really, it's just like, I'm going to keep repeating myself. You want to avoid putting yourself in a situation where you are also going to be subject to arrest and detention. So while you might have the right to video them, if they're yelling at you, telling you they're going to arrest you if you don't stop, it's up to you to make that judgment call, whether you're willing to risk that or not. We do ask everyone to kind of, judge their own risk level and risk tolerance. And can I go to the next slide, please? And so in conclusion, really, if you're going to set up a MAGA Watch network, we recommend an encrypted form of communication. We use Signal. I know WhatsApp is really popular with a lot of international folks. It doesn't really matter what platform you use, as long as it's encrypted. We make people go through training before they can be admitted, just to really kind of verify that they are who they say they are, but also to avoid that thing I was just talking about of unconfirmed, ICE sightings being spread around. It's always great if you have secondary language skills in addition to English. Learn what languages are prominent with immigrant communities in your area. It might not be the most obvious ones you expect. People often assume it's like Spanish, maybe Mandarin are going to be the big immigrant languages. But like in Sacramento, for example, we have a huge Afghan population. So we have a need for Dari and Pashto speakers. We have a big Russian and Ukrainian population. It's all about like figuring out what's really prominent with the immigrant community in your region. And just get organized. A lot of cities throughout NorCal besides Sacramento have like a hotline system, and it's better than nothing, where you can call in and you talk to often a reporter or a volunteer from like an immigration law firm. You let them know what's happening. Like that's good because, but it's definitely better than nothing. But with what we have with NorCal Resist, where we have this massive group chat, we almost always have someone free to dispatch to check out a sighting, and that's kind of the basics of how you'd set up a Migro Watch network and start keeping your immigrant community safe.
Do you want to take any questions, Ben?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I know I went right up to the 10 minutes, but if anyone has a question or two, happy to answer them or respond in the chat if you want to start the next speaker as well.
We'll go back to those slides that we skipped. So it's like all over the place now.
This is my fault. I sent the slides to you guys late. I'm sorry. Hi, my name is M. I go by they, them pronouns. M is not my real name. I am an Afro-Indigenous activist, water protector, land protector, people protector. And I am here today to talk about what it means to protect people from deportation. So, my friends, my fellow defenders of people, land, water, and justice, we sit here today at a crossroads of conscience. We face a choice between obedience to an unjust system and allegiance to the deeper law of human dignity, the law of empathy, the law of love. We are told that helping undocumented people is illegal, that sheltering those who have fled war, famine, persecution, and unthinkable hardship is a crime. When did it become unlawful to stand with the oppressed instead of the oppressor? History is watching us, and history has seen this before. There was a time when it was illegal to shelter enslaved people seeking freedom. There was a time when it was illegal to hide Jewish families from the terror of the Nazis. There was a time when marching for civil rights was met with batons in prison cells. And that time has come again, or maybe it has never really stopped. Justice does not wait for permission. You can stop at this slide here. Justice does not wait for permission. Protecting the undocumented people is not just an act of caring, it is an act of resistance. It is a declaration that we will not let cruelty define us, that no matter what laws are written on paper, that there is a higher law written in our hearts that tell us that no human being is illegal. So what I am here to talk about today is harboring people who are undocumented. What does it mean to harbor an undocumented person? Is it illegal to provide housing to illegal immigrants? Is it illegal to simply drive them where they're trying to go? Yes, it is. Committing an alien harboring offense is defined by Title 8, U.S. Code 1324 as any person who, knowing or in reckless disregard of the fact that an alien has come to, entered, or remains in the United States in violation of law, conceals, harbors, or shields from detection, or attempts to conceal, harbor, or shield from detection, such alien in any place, including any building or any means of transportation. Harboring can also refer to knowing that someone has entered the country without explicit permission or visa and knowingly concealing them from detection. It can include giving directions on how to find false documentation or warning them about ICE being in the area. It can also include encouraging an undocumented person to come to or enter the US without proper form of documentation. So yes, there are consequences to there may be consequences to harboring someone who is undocumented. Right? But what kind of society do we have if the law demands that we turn our backs on our neighbors? If the law forces us to be silent in the face of people suffering? We cannot ignore the cries of children and the desperation of mothers and the fear that we see in their fathers of going back to a country where they don't have any life, where they may face imminent death. So there are many, you can go to the next slide. There are many people, organizations, and mutual aid networks that defy the law every day and are actively supporting undocumented people and families with food, housing, and employment. They are providing essential services that the government and many 501c3 churches fail to offer. These groups step up to ensure that undocumented individuals and families have access to food, shelter, healthcare, and legal assistance. Mutual aid networks, in particular, operate on the principle of solidarity, neighbors helping neighbors, and a system of reciprocal care. Groups like the National Day Labor Organizing Network, United We Dream, and local sanctuary coalitions organize resources, offer Know Your Rights trainings, and create rapid response networks to protect immigrants from detention and deportation. Despite hostile policies and systemic barriers, these networks exemplify the power of collective action and human compassion. Volunteers and activists put themselves and their freedom on the line to shield undocumented people from exploitation and deportation. If you are here today because you want to stop the mass deportations and you feel powerless, I'm here to tell you that you are not powerless. And there are direct actions you can take to support our undocumented relatives. You can make a real impact by joining existing immigrant support organizations or starting your own mutual aid network. Many cities and towns have grassroots groups, faith-based organizations, legal aid nonprofits that are dedicated to assisting undocumented communities. To get involved, start by researching local immigrant rights organizations, attending their events, and volunteering. Many of these groups need help with food distribution, language translation, transportation, or legal support. If direct volunteering isn't possible, donating money, supplies, or just spreading awareness about these organizations can be very valuable. For those who want to take a more active role, or if there aren't any organizations like this in your area, starting a mutual aid network is a powerful way to provide direct support without the bureaucracy of joining an org. Mutual aid operates on the principle of solidarity, where community members share resources and care for each other without relying on government institutions. To begin with, you need to connect with local undocumented people to understand and assess their needs. And these needs could involve housing, food security, access to medical care. Starting a mutual aid organization that provides shelter for undocumented people requires very careful planning, discretion, and a strong network of committed individuals. Because harboring undocumented individuals can carry legal risks under the law, it is essential to understand both the risks and the protections available before proceeding. Many faith-based groups and sanctuary movements have successfully created safe spaces for undocumented people by by leveraging community support, legal advocacy, and a decentralized structure to reduce risk. So there are some steps to creating a mutual aid network. Step one is you need to build a trusted community, a trusted network. You can find people who want to build with you by connecting with local immigrant rights groups, local ICE Watch chapters, Unitarian Universalist churches, Quaker meeting houses, and other liberal houses of faith, and other organizations that have experience supporting undocumented people. What you're doing is you're fishing for people who are going to help you shelter and support people. So you need to create a core team of trustworthy people that are going to be committed. Step two is you all need to understand the legal considerations. You need to consult with immigration and civil rights attorneys to understand your local and federal laws. You need to research protections under the sanctuary movement and ensure that all participants know their rights and their risks. Step three is you need to identify safe housing options. You need to work with homeowners, landowners, renters, and faith-based groups that will be willing to discreetly offer shelter. You should rotate housing locations if necessary to reduce exposure and risk. Ensure those being housed are aware of their rights and have emergency plans in place. Step four is you need to secure resources. Fundraise discreetly through trusted networks, avoiding paper trails that could expose individuals to risk. Gather essential supplies such as food, bedding, medical aid, and legal assistance. Connect with a doctor or nurse that can provide care for the people that you are sheltering. Definitely connect with a lawyer who will give you advice and show up for you and people in your mutual aid network if you're arrested or the people you are caring for are arrested. Step five is develop security and communication protocols. So I don't believe that there are any truly secure messaging apps. People use Discord and people use Signal and WhatsApp. But if someone is arrested and the messages aren't disappeared, the police can have access to those messages and contacts. So I would avoid organizing on messaging apps and organize in person as much as possible. If you are using Signal or one of these messaging apps, set sensitive messages to disappear after a certain amount of time. There's an option for that, so that the messages between your mutual aid network are not saved. You need to establish clear security guidelines, including emergency response plans in case of raids or threats. So step six is integrating into broader mutual aid efforts. You should connect with other local mutual aid groups. There are definitely other people who care about these issues in your area. And sometimes it's hard to find these other organizations. So if you show up to demonstrations, if you show up to protests, you will likely meet other mutual aid groups that are doing the same work that you're doing. And when you work together, you can expand your resources and your accesses to, lawyers and doctors and other critical services that the people you're caring for may need. So most importantly, a successful mutual aid network builds trust and censors the voices of undocumented people, ensuring that their needs and their views and safety come first. This kind of mutual aid requires dedication, discretion, and strong community ties. The key is to create a network that is resilient, community-driven, and focused on the well-being and autonomy of the people you are caring for. So I will leave you with this. This work is not only about survival, but also about affirming the dignity and worth of every person, regardless of borders. In a world that criminalizes migration, which humans have done for millennia, These efforts send a powerful message. Undocumented people are part of our communities and their lives matter. We will shelter the weary. We will feed the hungry. We will give refuge to the persecuted, because that's what it means to be human. Because our borders should never be stronger than our bonds of compassion. We will not be afraid. We will not turn anyone away, and we will not stop. Thank you.
All right, thank you for those encouraging words. I just wanted to share some organizations that are helpful in this area. This is a list of legal organizations that help immigrants, can provide them with services on immigration or if they're being falsely detained. And then here are a few more organizations that provide mutual aid. Okay, let's jump into our next segment on democracy. So the organization I'm going to be focusing on is Indivisible. So Indivisible was founded in 2016 by Leah Greenberg and Ezra Levin. Both of them were aides who worked in Congress. They helped the members of Congress. And they wanted to take tips that they were learning at the time from the Tea Party movement and apply it to the progressive movement. So they came up with a guide on how progressives can fight back against the Trump first administration using many tactics that have been used by the Tea Party, and of course what they learned about how the government works with their experience working on Capitol Hill. So their vision is a real democracy of, by, and for the people. Yeah, so their justification is that they want to build a better democracy that reflects a broad multiracial coalition, one that works for all of us and is sustained by all of us. They're doing this in response to current problems where it tends to favor the white and the wealthy. And these alliances have actively worked to further undermine democracy and cement their hold on power. And we're seeing this especially out in the open now in the second administration. So their strategy is all about being united and everyone acting together. They develop leaders and groups in a movement to coordinate all these actions throughout the country. So they have a central operation that examines what is happening and creates actions for all of the local groups to do. And they have support systems for the group leaders. And then their inside-outside strategy is composed of fighting government from the inside and then applying pressure from locally based constituent groups to demand elected leaders work for our democracy. So during the years when there's an upcoming election, they do a lot of work to ensure that Democrats get elected. And then in the off years, that they're working to hold those leaders accountable. So indivisible groups are all over the country. And if you go to their website, indivisible.org, you can find a group that is near you, sorted by state. You can also start a group of your own. So one of the original resources that Indivisible provided was a playbook where they described, what is the overall strategies and tactics and tips for how everyday Americans can fight back together wherever we live. And then this guidebook has expanded over time to have a weekly action update, Zoom meetings, emails, so that everybody can be responding to the issues at the same time in the same ways. And then this guide has been updated for the 2025 cycle. And Ezra and Leah have continued to do the weekly Zoom meetings, all of the members. Yeah, so if you go to their website, you can download the original one as well as the newer one, listen to it on the audio version. And then they provide actions every week that responds to what has been happening. So for example, this week, they are calling on all the activists to call on the members of Congress to demand resignations after Trump's national security leak. And if you go to the links, they have a tool where you put in your zip code and it'll call the member of Congress for you, and then you just leave a message. You can also search past issues by issue or by campaign. So the local chapters do a variety of things, often in response to what is going on in their area, in addition to nationally. So that can include coalition building, planning local marches, postcard writing to support the upcoming elections, and many other things. Mobilize.us is another website that Indivisible uses to organize all the different actions. So you can search by actions that are near you or actions by issue. This is a screenshot of all the actions that are happening near where I am. The one that's coming up is the mass mobilization on Saturday, April 5th. So actions, rallies essentially are being planned all across the country in all the major cities. If you go to handsoff2025.com, they have more information on how to get involved in all these rallies or plan one of your own. Okay, so here are some links for Indivisible on Blue Sky, Instagram, and mobilize.us.
And it is 4 o'clock. We're running a little over, so if you need to go, go. And you'll get the recording. And if you want to stay, stay. We have reproductive rights yet to go, and then a little bit of integration if you want to stay. All right, on you, Jill.
I'm really happy to be here. I'm so inspired by these talks, so thank you for bringing us all together. Next slide. My name is Jill Delston. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm an assistant professor of philosophy at the University of Missouri, St. Louis, among other things. Next, please. I'm here to talk about reproductive rights, reproductive justice, and reproductive freedom, which is just another way of saying what feminism has been advancing for thousands of years, according to Gloria Steinem, and she's pictured here with Dorothy Pittman Hughes. Next, please. So the movement did not end thousands of years ago. Reproductive justice is a term that was coined in the 1990s by women of color. It's meant to capture the ways in which the reproductive rights movement of the 70s was sort of incomplete by itself. And that's because, first of all, it didn't really mention or include the fact that we also have to include rights to have children safely and not just protect the choice not to have children if that's what we want. And also that the rights and choice language maybe overlook some access problems that some populations faced. Next, please. And that's just another way of saying that we need an intersectional movement. That's Kimberly Crenshaw, who coined that term intersectionality. I'll come back to her, but we'll move on to the next slide. And I wanted to start with the fact that birth control access is absolutely a central component of reproductive justice. This is Angela Davis saying that birth control, which includes individual choice, safe contraception methods, as well as abortion when necessary, is a fundamental prerequisite for the emancipation of women. Next slide, please. And starting with that issue of contraception brings us to the topic of my book, Medical Sexism, which is a book focused on this concept of medical sexism as a way of sort of talking about a lot of disparate issues in the medical field that all exhibit or promote a gendered hierarchy. And that gendered hierarchy is something that we want to both identify and address and also oppose. So moving on to the next slide, Contraception, is incredibly popular. More than 99% of people who can use contraception have used it. Hormonal birth control is also over the counter in more than 100 countries. As of 2023, that includes the United States, which passed an over-the-counter birth control called O-pill. Unfortunately, it's an estrogen-only pill that's one of the least effective on the market, but it is available. And even given this popularity, demand for birth control still surged after the Dobbs decision reversing Roe versus Wade. And so talking about the way that birth control access can be disrupted, I think is helpful. So a commonly faced problem is doctors who require a pap test, a yearly pap test, in order to release a birth control prescription refill. That is a policy that is opposed by every major medical organization because patients usually don't need pap tests every year, and they certainly don't need their birth control jeopardized through these tests, which are irrelevant. They're not relevant to the safety or the efficacy of birth control. So you can move on to the next slide, sorry. So there, in one way, we can focus on how that's a violation of human rights. The Article 25 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is to healthcare. There's Eleanor Roosevelt holding it. We also have 14th Amendment rights to privacy, rights to reproductive autonomy, and rights to refuse treatment. In this case, the right to refuse treatment includes the right to refuse a pap test. Next slide. And so, yeah, I want to just point out that this policies like this are scientifically flawed. They are morally unacceptable. They cause harm, and they violate rights. They're also legally negligent because they fall under a definition of medical malpractice, meaning that if somebody takes away needed medical care, that falls under this definition of medical malpractice. So like imagine your doctor said, well, I know you really need dialysis, but you got to get your colonoscopy before I'll give you dialysis. It wouldn't make any sense. It would be jeopardizing that needed medical care. And it's helpful to think about these issues in terms of the sexism that they promote, because it's got this disproportionate impact on female patients and patients associated with women. And that sexism is a callback to this idea of medical sexism and the fact that there is a promotion of a gendered hierarchy here. I also want to bring up contraception because I think it's a helpful lens to looking at abortion. Abortion is often described by like abortion opponents as turning on the moral status of the fetus. But if we look at contraception first, we can see, okay, there's no fetus here. This is before the fetus exists. And yet the same behaviors and attitudes and actions to restrict people's bodily autonomy are in place. And so it kind of shows the consistency between the anti-contraception and anti-abortion approaches. And I think that that's really helpful in understanding what's going on. It's an aim to control people's bodies and women's behavior. Even before Dobbs, 1 in 5 women had to travel more than 40 miles to reach an abortion provider, even though almost everybody lives within 4 miles of a hospital. If hospitals, of course, provided these procedures, then people wouldn't be in this kind of trouble. But after Dobbs, then we see that the restrictions got much worse. Next slide. Today, 58% of women ages 13 to 44 live in a state with abortion restrictions, would have to go out of state to get one, many not even to a neighboring state. 12 states have total abortion bans. Another 7 have bans in the first 18 weeks, and another 22 have more restrictions later time points in the pregnancy. So next slide. These kinds of policies we know kill people. Kimberly Crenshaw writes that the decision to overturn Roe versus Wade will be lethal to Americans, particularly Black and queer people, who will now lose their already limited access to abortions. And that, of course, has turned out to be true. We can see that from cases like this one in Texas, where we can see that people not having access to abortion means that they can't survive. Missouri, where I live, is a sort of a beacon of hope here. Next slide. It's the first state to overturn an abortion ban through direct democracy. It passed a Constitutional Amendment 3 in November 2024. Since then, it's been a complicated story because there's been a lot of legal challenges and people trying to block access. But yesterday, this email went out from Planned Parenthood that they're finally offering abortions again. And so I think that there's a lot that we can do that can be beneficial when we sort of work together and focus on these issues. Next slide. I wanted to bring things back to this earlier point of not only do we need to have access to contraception and abortion, but we also need to have the right to have safe pregnancies if we want to have children. So this is work I'm doing with a social worker in Missouri, Anna Bender, and it's opposing a policy that Missouri has to not process any divorces if one of the people is pregnant. So obviously this is really bad for women. Intimate partner violence often increases during pregnancy. It's incredibly fatal both to the pregnant person, as well as to the fetus. And it creates a couple of double binds. One is that that I'll focus on here is just that if a pregnant person does not leave their partner and exposes their children to intimate partner violence, Child Protective Services can take their children away because they can say, "Oh, you are not providing a safe environment for the child because you stayed with your husband," essentially. So if they stay, of course, they're in trouble and they could lose their children. And then if they get pregnant, they can't leave, which also increases reproductive coercion on the part of their partners. And so it's something that we can focus on and oppose with legal action. The next slide shows the states that it's not just Missouri, other states prevent pregnant people from getting divorced. And some states don't have a specific targeting of pregnant women, but they do have these waiting periods that are so long that it basically means that you can't get divorced while pregnant. In the next slide, I think I consider some resources, yes, I do, that are helpful to work on these issues. The Guttmacher Institute is provided some research that I appealed to today, and Planned Parenthood as well. Emily's List is always does a good job of getting people in office who are pro-choice. And in the next slide, I talk about specific actions that we can take. So first of all, we want to call restrictions what they are, which is medical sexism. Naming and identifying them is incredibly important. Second, we want to avoid buying into this pro-life narrative of fetal personhood because that's not an accurate representation of what's going on. Third, we want to hold parties responsible and accountable and avoid those double standards. And then the last recommendation is to pursue reproductive justice. We want to be intersectional and center marginalized voices. So I'll end on the last slide with a quote from Audre Lorde, which is sort of focusing on the unifying aspects of everything that we've heard here today, and that they have so much in common and that we can sort of beat this stuff together. So thanks.
Oh, all right. Thank you so much. That was really awesome. Thanks to everyone. So just wrapping up, I want to share that if you want to co-work to take action, you can join me for Activism Hour, which is every Tuesday now at 1 and 7 p.m. Eastern. I provide a list of actions updated every week for people to do, or they can do their own. I provide the actions from Indivisible and a few other organizations. And it's just a good time for people to carve out some time to actually take the actions, and not just think about it and then do them later, which never happens. 5 Calls is also a great resource. It's an app that you download onto your phone, and it provides you with scripts and connects you directly with your members of Congress. All right, well, I'll turn it over to Indigo for the rest of the integration.
Yeah, so I'd love those of you who have the space to take a moment. We shared a whole lot. So just if you could close your eyes or look away from the screen, just tune in to whatever's happening inside. You could take some breaths. You can reflect on if any of the issues that we covered today pop up as the one or two that you want to focus on. So we had climate and environment, democracy, immigrants, trans rights, reproductive rights. Yeah, notice if any of those has a little flutter, you have a special feeling or not. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes if they were closed. It's up to you if you want to look at the screen. It can be a lot to do this for 90 minutes. And we're going over that. So here's a short list of actions you could take. Just to simplify, I picked out one thing from each topic. Of course, you'll be getting all of the info, so you can dive deeper if you'd like. But could you go back to the first one? Yeah, you could join Citizens Climate Lobby, the Green New Deal Network for climate. You could join Indivisible for democracy. You could join or donate to the ACLU for immigrants. Next slide. You can follow Erin in the morning for trans rights. You can get involved with Planned Parenthood for reproductive rights. Again, this is not exhaustive at all. We covered way more than this. And then overall actions that are kind of, you'll catch a lot of these topics. Join Activism Hour, Clara. I like to schedule time each day to use 5calls.org, or if it's just a couple days or every week, attend the National Day of Action on April 5th. I have an activist friend who says that protests could be effective in showing our movements how many people are on the same team. So I'm going to try to go. If you don't usually go to protests, this might be a good one to go to. Okay. And if you're still on, thanks for being here. And if you would like, you can share in the chat one, either the topic or topics that you want to focus on. So tuning in, what is the one or two focus areas that you want to pick? Not that you can't do something for a lot of stuff, but it's good to realize what is most important to you. So if you'd like, you can put that in the chat, whatever topic resonated with you. You don't have to. You can notice that for yourself. And then also check in with at least one action item that you'd like to take after this call. Oh yes, disability justice is super important. And unfortunately, we're in a very ableist society, so it's always important. But yeah, tuning into your topic, you're at least one action item, even if that action item is just to review what we send out. Just picking at least one thing to get started, the first step. No action is too small. I'm going to rallies, focusing on climate and democracy, disability justice. Action hour. Oh, it's nice seeing thanks to us. Taking that in. So putting it together. Yeah. It feels super aligned, like energizing. It helps me not feel afraid when I take effective action. Okay, so again, thanks y'all for being here. Thanks for anyone who watches this, the recording. And thank you for any action, no matter how small or big, you take to protect what is precious and to create the more beautiful world we all know is possible. We're in this together. Okay, so that's all that we have for you. I'm feeling love. I'm sending it out to all of you.
Yeah, sending you all love, and definitely get involved, support these organizations. You don't have to do anything alone. Together, we are strong.
Yeah. Yeah, people are posting in the chat. Thank you. So, love, respect, solidarity. Remember to breathe.
Bye. Take care, everyone.
Bye.